You are a black man living in America in 1931. You're in the midst of the Great Depression and you have no job opportunities because of racial segregation. Not only do you lack the luxuries we are all used to today, but you do not have the necessities such as abundant food or appropriate shelter. On top of all this, you are frowned upon by the entire white society, which is most of the population where you live. Now you know what it was like to be the Scottsboro Boys.
The incident occurred March 25, 1931, when several people were hitching a ride on a freight train to Memphis, Tennessee. Some of the white boys on board jumped off when the black passengers allegedly flashed pistols and told them to get off. After jumping the train, they reported to the sheriff that they had been attacked by the black boys on the train. Not even questioning their story, the sheriff sent a posse to search the train. They stopped and searched the train in Paint Rock, Alabama, and arrested the Scottsboro Boys. On the train, the police also found two white girls from Huntsville in Madison County, Alabama, Victoria Price and Ruby Bate, who claimed that they had been raped by the black passengers.
This case was first heard in Scottsboro, Alabama. The trials conducted were rushed and the court disfavored the black boys. The odds of them or any African American winning a court case versus a white was highly unlikely at the time. On top of this, the black group received poor legal representation in court. All boys except the youngest of them, 12-year-old Roy, were found guilty of rape and sentenced to death. This was the common sentence for black men who were convicted of raping white women in Alabama at the time.
The guilty verdicts were in, the boys' fates were sealed. 8 of the 9 were going to die, and the last, Roy Wright, faced the rest of his life behind bars. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, did not come to the aid of the boys as was expected. Instead, the Communist Party saw the injustice and fought for the boys' freedom. The ILD, the Communist legal arm, declared that the boys had been framed. Realizing the boys were most likely innocent, the NAACP tried to get a well-known attorney to represent the boys on their behalf. It was too late, though. The boys had decided to stick with the Communists, who weren't exactly liked in the South.
When the case was taken to the Alabama Supreme Court, the court upheld all but one of the 8 convictions. Eugene Williams, who was 13 at the time, they decided should not have been tried as an adult. When the cases were appealed to the United States Supreme Court, in the case of Powell versus Alabama, the court ruled that the boys did not have competent counsel and were subject to
The ILD got 2 of the best lawyers in the game to represent the boys in their retrials. A lot of time had went by since the boys' first trial, in fact 2 years. During this time they were kept on death row in Kilby Prison. These boys witnessed many different horrors during these 2 years. They had to hear the sounds of men being electrocuted right down the hall from their cells. They only got to leave their cells once or twice a week to go down the hall for a shower. As the new trial approached, the boys were moved to a jail closer to the courthouse at which the trial was to be held. The jail was rat-infested and had been deemed unfit for white prisoners.
The new trial began March 30th, 1933, 2 years after their fiasco began. Their main defender, Samuel Leibowitz, argued the fact that the blacks were kept out of jury duty. He argued that why should the prosecutors be able to use blacks for witnesses while not have them included in the jury? Eventually, these arguments were put to an end when the motion of Leibowitz had put forward was squashed.
questioned by Leibowitz, it was shown that she was nothing more than a prostitute. Leibowitz also showed that the sperm from within her were not from any of the black men, but from one of the white boys. The doctor who had examined the girls on the night of the incident showed that the girls were calm and did not appear to have been raped. The trial continued and the prosecutors had very little evidence, and many of their star witnesses showed that the so-called facts were wrong.
The last witness of the trial was the girl who had been raped. They went on to tell how the story wasn't true and that it was all a lie. She explained the story and tried to clear things up as to what was fact and what wasn't. The prosecutor ripped into her and said that she was lying and that she was just trying to cover for the boys. The next day the jury came back laughing, so the boys thought that they were in the clear. They couldn't have been more wrong. The jury came back in and found them guilty and sentenced them to death. This decision only took the jurors 5 minutes.
Yet again, this trial was taken to a higher court, where again it was told that the verdict and sentence would be set aside and that there would be another trial. The judge who made this decision knew that what he was doing was political suicide, but he said this: "Let justice be done, though the heavens may fall." Needless to say, this judge was not re-elected.
This case was sent to Judge Callahan, who was a judge who didn't take any foolishness. The problem was he was massively unfair and was equivalent to another prosecutor. He upheld anything that the prosecutors asked for and denied anything the defense wanted. These trials came out with the same verdicts: guilty. So these trials were sent on to the U.S. Supreme Court once again. Again, the Supreme Court agreed it was unconstitutional to keep blacks off the jury, so they again forced a retrial.
Before the trial began, Leibowitz met with the prosecutor to discuss a deal. The prosecutor wanted this case to end because it was costing the state of Alabama too much time and money. The biggest reason they didn't want the court case to continue was because they were just plain tired of hearing about it. The prosecutors offered to drop the charges of 3 boys and give the others no more than 10 years in jail. Leibowitz did not want to accept this deal, but he knew that the boys were doomed regardless of whether or not they were innocent. Right before this deal could be sealed, the prosecutor died unexpectedly, and Judge Callahan pushed the trial date forward.
Again, things went the same way and Patterson was found guilty. But this time, he was sentenced to 75 years in jail. As the next boy was being taken to his trial, he managed to use a penknife to slash the neck of the sheriff. The sheriff slammed on the brakes, got out of the car, and shot Powell in the head. Even though he didn't die, he was left with serious brain trauma and was never the same again.
The trial began as expected. The boys were given guilty verdicts. Charlie Ream received 75 years in jail. Ozzie Powell's charges were dropped and instead pled guilty to assaulting a deputy. Astonishingly, the remaining 4 boys' charges were dropped. 2 were deemed to be too young at the time of the crime to be tried as adults, and the others were set free for whatever reason. While 4 of the boys were free, 5 remained incarcerated in some of the worst-kept prisons in the state. The governor of Alabama at the time had made it known he wanted to see an end to the boys' cases before he left office, so everyone expected for him to grant them a pardon. The boys were stubborn, though, and a number of events led the governor to not give the boys a pardon before he left office.
These boys are the epitome of racism in the 1930s and throughout the Great Depression. While these boys never did anything wrong, they were punished by years of turmoil and jail time. Now ask yourself, what if this was you? What if you were cut off from civilization for something as simple as the color of your skin? How would you feel if you were the one rotting in jail? What if?